So, I guess I finally got around to returning to this video series? Whoops. Look, in my defense, I kept getting distracted by other games, and I wanted to cover those, or I started writing loads about those games, so if anything, you should be blaming those games and not me. I'm innocent, sir. I am but a victim of their distracting ways. Okay, maybe I can shoulder a tiny amount of the blame, maybe a crumb, if you will. But it doesn't really matter because it's better late than never, right? Right? If you're thinking, shouldn't you be covering Alien Resurrection first? Well, you'd be right, but you see, I actually covered that in detail years and years ago. And if you'd like to check that out first, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, or here on the screen or something. I don't know, I'm not your dad. Also, I'm doing away with that entire counting gimmick thing. The one where I would say the word Yes, that's one. I think it was maybe amusing for 1 or maybe 2 videos, but I definitely think it outstayed its welcome by the end of the 3rd video. Someone brought it up in the comments, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought that they were maybe onto something. Admittedly, it got pretty tiresome having to make a note every time I said the bloody words oh, fuck off! So that is gone, forever left in the past, like my hairline. In this video, we'll be looking at all of the games set in the universe that are either their own separate entries in the series itself, or a sort of sequel to the films, with varying levels of quality in that regard. Additionally, there will be some games that I omit here, such as Alien Offworld Colony Simulator, In Utero, and Descent, as neither of them are really games per se, and more akin to interactive experiences. There's no real substance there, and I also won't be covering any of the mobile games either. We're still going in release order, so let's just get on with this, shall we? Because we have a lot of games to cover. Oh boy, do we have a lot to cover. What's this? A point-and-click adventure game set in the Alien universe? I have absolutely no idea how I'd never heard of this before. But that could mean one of 2 things, my friends. It's either a hidden gem, or miserably boring and forgettable. This was developed by Cryo Interactive and published by Mindscape in 1995 for PC. Huh. Cryo Interactive. Why does that name sound familiar? Oh Christ, they made From Dusk Till Dawn. Oh Christ, they made Time Cop. Hey, you know what? Sometimes people make bad games only to go on and make something really, really good. Like Bloober Team. So maybe this will actually be good. So how is it? It is not good. Before anyone says anything, yes, of course, it's dated. It's a PC game from 1995. But there are plenty of games from that era that are still fun to play and actually look nice. But this game is remarkably dull. It certainly didn't help that I had no idea what I was doing when I started the damn thing. There's no introduction. Nothing. You're just sort of thrown straight in with the player character, Henriksen, standing on the bridge. I imagine there's an actual introduction in the game's manual, which obviously I don't own, and yes, I could have gotten a PDF version, but well, shut up. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. In the game's defense, because of that, it does encourage you to chat to the 2 crew members on the deck, which is something, I suppose.
What do you want?
But to make matters worse, during certain sections of the game, there is an unseen timer counting down. And if you don't do what it wants you to do within said time limit, well then you're likely going to die. The problem is, the game just kicks off with a timer at the very beginning. To progress and not die horribly, Henriksen needs to format a CD with landing info for Williams here. This is done by placing a blank CD into the port so that Mum, not Mother, can sort it out for you. So, what's the timer here? Well, there are asteroids approaching and the ship is just going to fly straight into them. I had to use a walkthrough just to know what the hell I was doing and where I had to go. And thank God I did, otherwise I wouldn't have made it very far at all. Anyway, so what's the premise? What is actually going on here? The comic book adventure involves a small crew of terraformers led by former Colonial Marine, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Henriksen. Christ, that's a mouthful. Their ship, the USS Sheridan, picks up a distress call from a remote outpost, and wouldn't you know it, there are xenomorphs there. And wouldn't you know it, there's xenomorphs there. It's, you know, it's an okay setup, but unfortunately the game is just unbearably boring. And in my short time playing this, I found all of the characters pretty unlikable as well. Except maybe for Williams, he was okay. But the rest are also cookie cutter and generic that I didn't really care if they lived or died. And everyone mostly just acts like colossal shitbags to each other. They're just all wankers.
Chicken shit.
The comic book style characters I don't think gel very well with the pre-rendered backgrounds. It's just such an odd clash, and even worse when the characters are in their exosuits. Look at this. It just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. It's like a cardboard cutout in a suit of armor. And the combat, yes, there's combat, is simplistic. You left click to move and right click to either shoot or punch your enemies in the face. The latter of which is absolute suicide, by the way. Some critics of the time stated that it did a good job of making the xenomorphs frightening and dangerous, but the only time I saw any was during the exploration of the outpost once we landed, as they were part of yet another timer. So during this timer you'd see them breaking glass until they broke through and then probably murdered everyone. And they do not sound right.
Did you hear that?
Unfortunately, this is as far as I made it. You see, Henriksen here can't turn this valve. I genuinely thought the exosuit would help here. So I needed to get a pipe to help turn it, you know, it's some leverage. The thing is, I couldn't get the pipe. According to every walkthrough I looked up, including video walkthroughs by the way, I needed to go to this screen, which has the pipe in question laying on the floor. I could see the pipe, but I couldn't pick it up. I moved my inventory around to make sure there was space, and still nothing. There wasn't even a prompt, so the item itself wouldn't highlight when I'd move the mouse cursor over it. Nothing would highlight when I'd move the mouse cursor over it. All I can assume is that it was some sort of bug. You know, look, this is an old game, and the version I was playing was basically stitched together. So, you know, that might be the cause. But honestly, I wasn't really all that upset, as it meant I didn't have to play it anymore and I could move on to something else. I am bitterly disappointed in this one. I'd have loved for a proper, solid point-and-click adventure game set in the Alien universe. This did not scratch that itch. It's not exactly the best way to start the list off, is it? But on the plus side, that does mean that things can only get better. You know the worst thing? I can't even recommend this to hardcore fans. It's just not good at all, and if anything, immensely tedious. This is a real shame. I desperately wanted to like this.
Infected colonists in order to smuggle alien specimens past ICC quarantine.
Yes, sir.
Developed by Probe Entertainment and published by Acclaim and released in 1996 for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn and PC, this is a game I have a lot of nostalgia for. I'm pretty sure it was the very first game I played on the original PlayStation. It was either this or Tekken 1. This is still a really fun first-person shooter for the system. It's a real classic shooter, you know, like, or a Doom clone as they were called at the time. It's very simple and easy to pick up and play, but my God, does it get difficult later on. Now, it is called Alien Trilogy, but while locations from all three films are shown, it's more of a loose adaptation of Aliens, with Ripley sporting a look that's seemingly inspired by both the second and third films. I actually covered this in more detail years ago, back when this channel was still called Lost in the Warp Pipe. That's how long ago it was. In short, Alien Trilogy is still a damn good game. While it's rough around the edges and the enemy sprites look particularly ugly by today's standards, I still have a lot of fun with it, and the fast-paced gameplay holds up surprisingly well at times. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it didn't need to be either. If you would like to hear my opinions a bit more in depth, then just click the link in the description or click the link that should be showing up round about now. Yeah, that should do it. I really do think this would benefit from a Night Dive Studio remaster, and I'm holding out hope that they do that. It's a cracking game. Developed by Mythic Entertainment and published by Fox Interactive, Aliens Online saw release in 1998 on the PC. And what a novel concept for the time. An online-only game set in the Aliens universe. Fuck yes. Fuck yes. You can choose to play either as the Colonial Marines or the Xenomorphs. It's basically what you'd expect. There are actually a few options to customise your Marine as well. It's all very basic, but not too bad for 1998 to be fair. You enter your name, choose your class, and get ready for some bug stop. Oh. Okay, well, let's try that again, and... Okay, yeah, so I need to be honest about this one. I couldn't get it to work, but that really shouldn't come as a surprise. This game is coming up to 30 years of age. So giving my opinion on this is pretty much impossible, but some folks have got it working and were able to capture footage of it working. So I was at least able to watch someone play it, so there's that. Supposedly, you could have up to 200 players in one match at a time. Supposedly, you could have up to 200 players in one match at a time. With the Marines having access to the usual arsenal of weapons you'd expect, and the Aliens side being able to control facehuggers, drones, queens, and an Empress. And if you don't know what an Empress is, just look into some of the expanded lore. With a pool of experience points being used to choose those individual creatures. There were various different maps from facilities, stations, and ships available as playable locations, as well as LV-426, of course. And for its time, it looks like it could have been pretty enjoyable. I just wish I got to experience it back in the day, but I didn't have a gaming PC during that era. Oh well, can't have everything I suppose. Oh well, can't have everything I suppose. Aliens Thanatos Encounter was developed by Crawfish Entertainment and published by THQ, with a release in 2001 for the Game Boy Color. I actually played this back in the day, and I still own that original copy. It's also our first handheld title for this video. The game takes place aboard the titular Thanatos, a ship that has become overrun with xenomorphs, obviously. A squad of Marines are sent to assist the crew and destroy the alien threat. It's a decent, if basic setup, I suppose. Then again, it's very easy to run out of reasons for Colonial Marines to fight xenomorphs, isn't it? And at least it's got a bit of urgency and doesn't beat around the bush, it just gets straight into it. For a Game Boy Color game, it doesn't look awful and visually does the job, as you can make everything out and tell what everything is supposed to be. From the chestbursters, facehuggers, and varying sizes of xenomorphs, to weapons and item pickups. Speaking of the sprites, the Marines and some of the xenomorphs look very similar to those seen in Team 17's Alien Breed series on the Amiga. It's definitely what came to mind for me when I was recording footage for this. Also, I do get a chuckle from the way the civilians and crew of the ship just wander around aimlessly while all these gribbly and glooply monsters are sprinting throughout the ship. Look, I know it's just a Game Boy Color game, but it just looks funny to me. Speaking of the crew, to keep the player on their toes, some of them have been impregnated by a facehugger, and when you attempt to rescue them, a chestburster will erupt from them instead. It's a minor thing, but you end up cautiously approaching civvies during extraction missions. It's a nice touch. Before each stage, you can choose which Marine you'd like to control for that mission. All of them have different stats, which is also another nice touch. If a Marine is defeated in a stage, you have 200 seconds, which is an odd amount of time, but okay, to find them before they are impregnated and lost forever. These Marines act essentially as lives, and while it is nice having different stats and names, you're almost always going to want to pick the very best Marine, because you'll get through the stages quicker, which can absolutely drag at times. Strangely enough, another game that we'll be looking at later in this video does something slightly similar, but we'll talk about that more when we get to it. What is annoying is that if your Marine is taken at the very end of a stage, you not only have to save them, but also complete all of the stage objectives all over again. Blech. There's an assortment of weapons you can obtain throughout the stages. Starting with a motion tracker and a pistol, your Marine can eventually acquire the arsenal that you'd expect, from shotguns, pulse rifles, all the good stuff. In a really nice touch, you can equip weapons and items in both your left and right hands, meaning if you wanted to, you could dual-wield pulse rifles. And while that is ludicrous, considering the firepower, it's also incredibly badass, and I salute the silliness of it all. Unfortunately, hitting enemies can be a bit of a pain in the arse due to their erratic movements, which is made only worse when encountering particularly spongy enemies. Couple that with clunky Marine movement and it can be a bit of a pain to kill things. While all of that might be forgivable though, the hit detection is absolutely appalling. Shots can sometimes just pass straight through enemies. The hit detection just feels horribly inconsistent at times. You could argue that it's intentional, I suppose, but this is a Game Boy Color game. I don't think they were going for realism. And when it comes to taking damage for your chosen Marine, there doesn't seem to be any invincibility frames when you get hit, which means that your health can drain in nanoseconds. I played Alien's Thanatos Encounter back in the day on my Game Boy Color, and I thought it was only okay then, and I think it's safe to say I feel the same way now. It's not awful by any means, and while you could do a lot worse on the system, it's one of the weaker titles on this list. It is one of the weaker titles on this list. I did admittedly get pretty bored whilst recording footage for the video. Again, it's not awful, but it's pretty forgettable. Very middle of the road, and sometimes that can be worse. Next.
Keep it moving.
Alien's Extermination was developed by Play Mechanic and published by Global VR, releasing in 2006 for the arcade market only. It took 13 years, but we were finally graced with another light gun game set in the Alien universe. The players take the role of two Colonial Marines, part of a couple of squadrons sent to LV-426 after the destruction of Hadley's Hope, where they will encounter facehuggers, xenomorphs, and Weyland-Yutani synthetics, and of course a queen. There are a couple of new enemies here with these strange leech things and a flying Xeno called the Alien Dragon, not to be confused with the dragon from Alien 3. It's not too bad, and unlike Alien 3, the gun, I've not only laid eyes on the machine but actually played it as well. It's, as you would expect, a fun and mindless game that desperately wants to take all of your money away from you. It's unbelievably brutal in some areas. Like the gun, Extermination has light guns that are attached to the unit itself, which I've always found restrictive in the subgenre. I've just always preferred being able to pick up and freely move the weapon around. But on the plus side, the guns you get to play around with here are actually modelled after the iconic M4A1 pulse rifle. So you know what, that makes up for it. Visually it's quite nice for its time and certainly does the job of recreating locations from LV-426. The xenomorphs all look good and the atmosphere for an arcade game like this is pretty much what you'd expect. There's not really a whole lot to say about this one. If you do see it out in the wild, definitely give it a go.
What? You want some more? Ammo!
Alien's Infestation was developed by WayForward Technologies with Gearbox helping and Sega taking on the publishing duties. This was released on the Nintendo DS in 2011. We're returning to a handheld system again and spoilers, this is easily the best one in this entire video series. This is easily the best one in the entire series. Infestation sees a squad of 4 Colonial Marines from the USS Sephora docking with the USS Sulaco after the events of both Aliens and Alien 3. They have been sent to investigate and recover a lifeform signature coming from the vessel. However, unbeknownst to them, other forces have discovered the vessel and become hosts to a new batch of xenomorphs, with our band of Marines coming face to face with the most dangerous creature in the universe. This is a Metroidvania, but a very, very simplistic one at that. The main hub is that of the USS Sulaco itself, which is what you'll find yourself exploring for most of the game, with a few away missions acting as linear stages that really do help mix up the gameplay. And I have to say, I love how this game looks. All the character sprites look wonderful. No matter how old I get or how advanced modern graphics become, I will always absolutely adore great pixel art. It's charming and, if I'm honest, I think has proven to be absolutely timeless. Everything here is animated fluidly, with actions having real weight behind them. It just looks great. It just really looks great, along with all of the environments as well. Shooting is simplistic, but nothing complex was really needed for this. It does the job, and that's all you can really ask for it. By holding down the L button, you can keep your Marines stationary whilst aiming in all directions. There is even a very, very basic cover mechanic which is useful when dealing with human enemies. Yes, you heard me right. You don't tend to fight non-Xeno-Rongans all that often, but when they do rear their ugly heads, they manage to mix up the gameplay and they never outstay their welcome either. Variety is good. These human enemies are the Union of Progressive Peoples, or the UPP for short. I bet you do. I can't believe I just said that, oh Jesus Christ. Which is not only cool for fans of the expanded lore in the franchise, but also for fans that are familiar with William Gibson's unused script for Alien 3. There are also some robots and synthetics that you will need to deal with during the campaign as well. All of the weapons that you'd expect are here, with the smart gun being the very best of the best, but you shouldn't really be surprised by that. Unfortunately, there's a weapon limit, and you can only have one primary equipped at a time, with the pulse rifle probably being the best all-around weapon until you get the smart gun. The flamethrower is essential for clearing xenomorph gloop, but I never found it all that useful outside of those moments. While these primaries can run out of ammunition, you will always have a pistol available to you, and that cannot run out of rounds, thankfully. All of these weapons can be upgraded 3 times by grabbing these upgrade kits, which increase the ammo capacity and damage. As I said, there is a weapon limit, and you can only change your primary weapon when you enter save rooms. On top of that, there are grenades and other explosives available, and these can all be switched on the fly using the inventory system and tapping with the stylus, or the mouse if you're emulating. Who'd emulate, right? I'd never emulate anything. There's a welding tool, a flashlight, and a motion tracker, and they are all truly essential for completing the campaign. Sound effects are great, weapons have that punch you'd hope for, in particular the pulse rifle and smart gun. The hisses and snarls of xenomorphs are spot on, and the music even does a decent job too, with orchestral stings seemingly taken straight from James Horner's score for Aliens. And I'm pretty sure the xenomorph sounds are ripped straight from that film as well. It absolutely nails the atmosphere of the series, especially for a handheld title. Similar to Thanatos Encounter, there are multiple Marines to play as during your time with Infestation. While some might be disappointed that they don't have different stats, the game makes up for it by giving them their own personality and look, with some great comic book style artwork. I'm almost certain that the dialogue slightly differs between your chosen Marine and their CO. You can only take 4 in a squad at all times, and when one of them falls in battle, they're gone. You can't rescue them, they can't be found elsewhere, they're dead. Thankfully, there are other Marines around the various levels that have been cut off from their own squads. Find them and ask them to join you. It's that simple. But if you've got a full squad already, they won't join you. But if you do lose a Marine, just go back to them. Unfortunately, you can only switch between these Marines in save rooms or when your controlled character dies. In a touch that I am eternally grateful for, when you lose one during a fight, you're not booted back to a checkpoint, you just carry on straight from there with the next Marine. There was one thing that was glaring to me when recording footage for this video, and I really don't remember it being such a problem back in the day. But my god, there is so much text! There is so much text! The first 30 minutes playing the game has just constant interruptions by not only your squad, but their CO, who is back on, I assume, the dropship, or maybe their own vessel itself. But every time you do something for the first time, like, I don't know, sneeze, this guy has to chime in and talk about it. I know it's a bit like an old man yelling at clouds regarding this in games, but just shut up and let me play the game. But you know the most important thing? That's just a minor quibble, because this game is still an absolute blast to play through. Look, I know it's not perfect, and it's got a few little problems, but I genuinely had trouble putting this one down whilst recording footage. I just didn't want to stop playing, and was consistently thinking to myself, it's not too late, I'll stop at the next save point, whilst constantly glancing over at the time. Once I'd grown accustomed to the controls again, everything was moving at such an exciting and fast pace. It's not all perfect though, and there are some frustrating aspects, such as the amount of air duct systems that just lead nowhere and have no useful items in them, or this section where you need to don a spacesuit and traverse the Sulaco from the outside. To put it bluntly, I hated this section, but I still appreciate their attempt at adding some variety. During your adventure, you'll encounter different bosses in the form of a queen, a space jockey xenomorph, and then this gigantic fucker that Weyland-Yutani have made, because of course they have. A first playthrough will take roughly 3 hours, and honestly I think that's a good length for Infestation. This is easily the best handheld Alien game by quite the distance. Admittedly, towards the end, I started to find the gameplay loop a little tiresome, but the overall experience is enjoyable and something I would absolutely recommend. It is damn good. Oh no. Aliens Colonial Marines was developed by Gearbox Software, published by Sega, and released in 2013 for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and on PC, with additional support from the Gates of Hell. Okay, look, I played this when it was first released, and to put it bluntly, I fucking hated it. Yeah, I know, hot take Mr. Finch, everyone did. The only reason I was able to drag myself through it was because I was playing it with 2 other friends at the time, where we spent most of the time in sheer awe over how miserably boring it is. It's often heralded as one of the most disappointing games of that year, and yeah, it is, but I never see anyone talk about how dull most of the experience is. Bar the genuinely fun stealth section partway through the game, you know, that's one of the only good things about it. The AI was broken, both the friendly and hostile NPCs alike, and the story that the game told just fell absolutely flat on the floor for me, ending on a bloody cliffhanger that went nowhere, because these crap games always end with a fucking cliffhanger. Can developers just stop doing that? No, I get it, like, but what if franchise, but just tell a concise story and then build upon it later. Please. This is made even funnier by the promotional material at the time, where everyone in the team was talking about how great it was going to be, to the point where the lead writer is bigging up this utter generic tripe that he'd spewed out. You know, maybe if he'd spent less time sniffing his own farts, he'd have been more creative. But I suppose, you know, he's not going to sit there and say, yeah, this is pretty shit actually. But I would have respected the honesty. But you know what, for this video, I wanted to give it another chance, you know, since it's been such a long time since I'd actually played it. So I downloaded the PC version via Steam, because it was on sale, and tinkered with the game's config file to fix the Xenomorph AI. Yeah, if you didn't know, there was a mistake in the code when the game originally launched, which meant that our gloopy friends here didn't act the way that the devs originally intended. And what was the mistake, you might ask? Well, it was a typo. A fan noticed this while they were going through the config file, and they changed the line of code, and supposedly the Xeno AI is much better for it. But you know, let's just see, shall we? How about I just jump back on the game, I'll give it another chance, and maybe it's better, maybe it's not as bad as I remember. Nope, this is still shit. The game looks bad, it plays awfully, the action is boring, the weapons feel underpowered, the enemies are all annoying, the characters are all unlikable dickheads, and the story is embarrassingly generic and bereft of creativity. It sucked back in 2013, and it's even worse now. Look, I know that this game does have its fans, so I might get a bit of flack for this section, but you know what? Good. I'm glad you like it. Genuinely, I'm really glad you like it. And if anything, I wish I did. But even after all of this time, I just really don't and didn't enjoy my time with this. I think, personally, it's just a mediocre at best shooter that doesn't do the franchise any justice and adds nothing of any substantial quality to the series. If you must play it, don't do so alone. Get a couple of friends to join you, and you're likely to have a much better time with it. But this ain't for me. Next. Well, if it isn't another light gun game. Developed by Play Mechanics and published by Raw Thrills, Aliens Armageddon was released in the arcades during 2014, and wouldn't you know it, there's a xenomorph outbreak on Earth. I bloody hate it when that happens. Unfortunately, it's not an adaptation of the popular Earth War series by Dark Horse Comics. It's actually its own thing entirely. Here the player assumes the role of a Marine as they try desperately to reach a colony ship with other survivors to escape the planet. Oh, I can get behind that. I'm not sure I really like the weird cel-shaded style of this one. Look, I know it's to make it look more like a comic book, but I don't know if it translates very well here. Unlike The Gun and Extermination, Armageddon's cabinet has rifles that you can actually pick up and play around with. Unfortunately, they're generic assault rifles and not pulse rifles. Sad noises. If you've played the Terminator Salvation arcade game, then you might recognise these shooty sticks. That's because they're exactly the same. I guess it's saved on money or something. Look, I get it. It would cost a lot more and all that, but being able to actually pick up an M4A1 pulse rifle in the arcades would be all kinds of fun. Anyway, like the previous light gun shooter on this list, I've also been able to play around with Armageddon in person. The first stage is surprisingly easy, but my God, does that arcade difficulty rear its ugly head in stage 2. It's almost nostalgic in a way. During the game, you'll be fighting the usual catalogue of Gribblies as well as 2 bosses, the Flying Alien Queen and this big bastard. Unfortunately, like Extermination, I couldn't actually find a way to play this at home, and I straight up refused to pay randos money for a ROM. That's just taking the piss. Oh, and fun fact, this was later repackaged in the arcades as Alien Covenant to coincide with the release of the film. Totally slots in, doesn't it? I guess in a later stage, Michael Fassbender runs at us brandishing a flute and demanding we let him do the fingering. I guess in a later stage, it has Michael Fassbender running at us brandishing a flute and demanding we let him do the fingering. If you spot this out in the wild, it's worth putting a couple of quid into, or insert your currency here. Just don't go expecting to come anywhere close to completing it, you know, unless you're minted or it's on free play. It's not a bad game. Oh, here we go. Spoilers, but this is easily my favourite game on this list. Scratch that, this is my favourite game in the entire series. This masterpiece was developed by Creative Assembly and published by Sega, releasing for the PlayStation 3 and 4, Xbox 360 and Xbone, PC, and even receiving a port to the Nintendo Switch in 2019. Let's not beat around the bush. I adore Isolation. I adored it when it was first released, and I still do. It's not perfect by any sense of the word, but this is a cracking survival horror game. The player takes the role of Amanda Ripley, desperately searching for answers regarding her mother's disappearance. She is approached by Christopher Samuels, a Weyland-Yutani synthetic, who tells her that the Nostromo's flight recorder has been discovered. It is being kept aboard the Seegson Corporation-owned Sevastopol station, which orbits a nearby gas nebula. Amanda heads out with Samuels, Nina Taylor, a Weyland executive, boo hiss, and the crew of the Torrens, but when they arrive, the station has fallen into disrepair, and it would seem that something else has made its way to Sevastopol station. Now, that's more like it. It's a premise I can fully get behind. I can't imagine the daughter of Ellen Ripley just accepting whatever bollocks Weyland-Yutani came up with. So I can totally buy this. Plus, it's set before Aliens, and even Romulus, meaning we get the full-on retro future aesthetic of that first film. And goddamn did Creative Assembly knock it out of the park. Everything in this just feels like it belongs in the universe, and visually does a great job for the look and feel. And what made this even wilder for me in 2014 was the fact that it released around a year after the dumpster fire that was Colonial Marines. Everything here is better. That is not hyperbole. The story is more engaging. It looks vastly superior. It plays better, and it made the Xenomorph frightening again. And, we'll get into that angry bastard, don't you worry. There are plenty of twists and turns and lots of meat to get your teeth into. One moment in particular is a standout that I absolutely refuse to spoil for those that haven't played it yet. Let's just say, when it all started to dawn on me in terms of what I was about to see and had to experience, my heart sank in all of the right ways. I feel Isolation also helped improving, at least for me, that mainstream survival horror was still a viable genre within the industry. During that time, most quote-unquote big developers had moved into action horror, similar to titles like Resident Evil 5 and The Evil Within, with that game's sequel being superior in every way. And I'm not saying that those games are necessarily bad, but they also failed to scratch that itch. While we had some good indie horror titles at the time that did scratch that itch, we didn't have any truly great high-budget survival horror entries, at least in my eyes. I'm not saying that Isolation saved the genre or anything, but I think it gave similar titles hope. Although, actually, reading back what I've just written, that comes across really bloody dramatic. This is a survival horror game built upon stealth. Mostly. I said the thing! I say mostly because during the first, third of the game, you'll have no way to combat this particularly stompy, angry xenomorph. You'll have to rely on staying out of sight, making as little noise as possible and hiding in lockers, desks, and other various things. Finding plans for the Molotov cocktail is an absolute game changer though, as you can launch it at this git and he does not like being set on fire by any means. Things change even more, however, when you get your hands on a flamethrower, which comes along at probably the perfect time, as it really does mix up the gameplay loop and makes you feel far more confident going through certain situations. But it's also really easy to get carried away and use up all of your fuel for it, which is pretty bad. The kicker is that our heavy-footed friend can gain a sort of resilience to it, and this means that you end up needing to use more fuel to get him to go away. Oh dear. The stealth I think works for the most part. My first ever playthrough saw me crouch walking everywhere, and then I discovered in my second playthrough that you can just walk and make no sound as well, which made me feel like a complete idiot. During the adventure, you'll be looking for passcodes, keycards, and plot-relevant items, as well as finding plenty of audio logs, diary entries, and emails. You know, all the really good survival horror stuff. It's such a small thing, but it's something that I always miss when horror games omit it. Anyway, you'll be trying to steer clear of not just the Xenomorph, but also other survivors and Seegson synthetics called Working Joes. They have a wonderful habit of sneaking up on the player and scaring the shit out of me. While the alien will ignore the working Joes, you can use the hostile survivors as a nice distraction while you slink away. Something I've always taken great pleasure in because those shitheads will try and riddle me with bullets. However, you will encounter non-hostile humans as well, although I'm always on edge when meeting them regardless. Certainly keeps you on your toes, that's for sure. Using all of the different tools with their individual minigames is admittedly pretty fun, and it always feels like you are active and not just coasting through locations. And speaking of locations, holy shit, the atmosphere here is absolutely spot on. With Sevastopol having so much personality and scale, and as I mentioned prior, it all feels like it belongs in universe, with nothing feeling out of place. I always find this very difficult to put down once the game gets going. The initial introductory / tutorial moments aren't particularly exciting, but they do a good job of building up the tension for what is to come later. And when the game is tense, it is really tense. There are moments where it is downright terrifying, usually as you are desperately trying to achieve your goal as our xenomorph friend here stomps around. There's nothing quite as nerve-wracking as trying to enter a passcode or complete a hacking minigame as you hear it drop down in the area, usually somewhere very, very close to you. Most of the characters in Isolation are pretty good, I think, with plenty of performances that bring everything to life, with Samuel's probably the standout to me, besides Amanda of course. Plus it is a nice bit of fan service in casting William Hope of all people as Marshall Waits.
We have a basic life support unit back at HQ.
Then let's go.
Speaking of fan service, Isolation might have the very best bit of fan service. Okay, if you don't want to know, skip to this time code.
Marlowe?
Who wants to know?
My name's Ripley. I'm with the company.
But in a flashback sequence, you get to walk around the barren wastes of LV-426 before navigating sections of the bone ship itself. While players have been able to do so in previous games, it's never been before the planetoid is terraformed. Not only does it look great, but you will discover remnants of the Nostromo's exploration, and the game even has a simple explanation as to why no one else discovered it before Burke gave the colony the coordinates. Back in 2014, I was grinning from ear to ear during this entire section. And if I have one minor, teensy, weensy little nitpick, it's that I think the game might be a little too long, and the final section does feel a little stretched out on repeated playthroughs. The first time I was having such a blast though that it didn't really matter, which is why it's a nitpick. I can totally understand why some people didn't like the length of the game, and that's fair, it's not a short experience. So how does the Xenomorph work? Well, I'm so glad you asked. One of you did ask that question, right? Was it you at the back? You at the back? Did you? No? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. If somehow you don't know, there are two AIs at play here that are communicating at all times. One is always looking for you, the Xenomorph, and the other knows exactly where you are at all times. But it will give the other AI hints, but it will never outright state exactly and precisely where you are in a room. Basically, it's saying something like this. It's saying, hey, why don't you check in that operating room over there? I think maybe she's in there. The player might be in there. And then the Xenomorph will start hunting for you, but because it doesn't know exactly where you are, that's why it will physically look around the room. It's why you should never stay in just one location, i.e. a locker, because eventually the alien will find you, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. You should also expect to die, like, a lot. Just be a bit braver, like, if you die, it's not that bad. Okay, unless you've not saved it for a while, that's quite bad. For this video, I played the PC version, and as silly as it sounds, using the keyboard to navigate sections on the terminal and then using the numpad to enter codes was oddly immersive. And you have to remember something. Before this, Creative Assembly only made real-time strategy games. So not only was this a big gamble for themselves and Sega, but the fact that they made something this good really does showcase the skill and talent within that studio. Man, I need to wrap this up. Otherwise, the majority of this video will just involve me talking about isolation. And, you know, this video is only going to be as long as it is, and this section is getting there. This really felt like it breathed fresh air into the lungs of not only the survival horror genre, but I think the Alien franchise itself. For me, the game still absolutely holds up. For the most part. But as previously said, it's a little too long, and the final act of the game does drag on, with it feeling as though it was stretched further than it really had to be. Coupled with a cliffhanger that, well, I've never liked it. And look, I love this game. I absolutely love this game. It was one of my favourite games of the year it was released, and it's probably one of my favourite games of all time. But like I said during the Colonial Marines section, I'm sick of games ending on a cliffhanger. Yes, we got a continuation of Amanda Ripley's adventures in the Dark Horse comic series, but we shouldn't have to see the conclusion or continuation of her story in this way. It's just a shame that the follow-up game that we got was Alien Blackout, which was only on Android and iOS. Once I saw the gameplay, I had zero interest in it. And I also don't know anyone that actually played it either. It looked pretty generic, if I'm honest. Which was a huge, huge disappointment, considering it was the only real sequel we had. Until Creative Assembly finally announced a proper sequel, and you better believe I'm stupidly excited to see what they come up with. But anyway, despite the little issues I have with it, Alien Isolation is a fantastic game, and I still think it is the single greatest game set in the Alien universe to date, and is my personal favourite of the bunch in this video series. It is that damned good. Will the sequel surpass it? Will the sequel surpass it? Only time will tell. But I hope so. So would I recommend Alien Isolation? Let me think. Yes.
Armor warrior, orient and engage.
Aliens Fireteam Elite was developed by Cold Iron Studios and was published by the studio itself, with help from Focus Home Interactive for the European market. Set 23 years after James Cameron's Aliens, Fireteam Elite sees a group of Marines getting caught up in the usual Weyland-Yutani shenanigans. The crew of the USS Endeavour pick up a distress call from the Katanga station orbiting LV-895, and it's been infested with xenomorphs! Oh no! But there is much more to it than that, thankfully, as it would appear that these researchers have discovered something else on the planet of LV-895. It's a silly plot that borders on fanfiction at times, but it knows what it is, and the game does some particularly heavy lifting to improve the experience even more. This is a cracking game to play with two other people. It's a Left 4 Dead style shooter with upgrades for equipment and character classes, which makes it more akin to the damn good World War Z video game, which was easily the best thing to come out of that film adaptation, by the way. Yes, I know, I'm British, and I shouldn't be pronouncing it as Z, but World War Z just doesn't really have the same ring to it, does it? Like those games, if you're Billy No Mates, then you can play through the entire campaign with two AI partners. In this instance, they are Colonial synthetic troopers, which I think is a nice touch. But be warned, as it makes the game considerably harder as you cannot select a class for them, and all they'll do is shoot and shoot and shoot. It's certainly playable, but for the proper experience, you really want to play it with other people. So, what are the classes available to the player? Well, there's 7 in total. We have the Gunner, the Demolisher, the Technician, Doc, Phalanx, and the Lancer. All of these have unique skills and abilities, as well as only being able to use certain firearms. And once you find the class that really works for you, then you'll be having a great time. But it doesn't end there, because when you level up these classes, it makes additional perks available for said class. These are basically what you'd expect, such as improving the effectiveness of special abilities, boosting damage, and so on and so forth. It's nothing fancy, but it is welcome. While the campaign itself isn't particularly long, there is a lot of replay value in the form of difficulty modes and challenge cards that you can acquire throughout missions. Some of these add fun modifiers to make missions tougher, but with that risk comes greater rewards. On top of that, there's not only customization for firearms with weapon parts and various aesthetical enhancements, from colour schemes to decals, but also character personalisation as well, with a ton of different skins that you can purchase from one of the guys on board your ship. And if you purchase the costume DLC, which I did because it was on sale dirt cheap, you get even more costumes to play around with. And I immediately equipped my technician to look like a crew member of the Nostromo. God, I'm such a nerd. Along with your main equipment, you can also find other items throughout a stage. There are different kind of mines to collect, one-use sentry turrets, all that good stuff. These can also be obtained after missions and equipped before starting a new stage, adding a little more customization and allowing you to better prepare for specific combat scenarios. The most common enemy you'll be facing up against are runner xenomorphs, similar to the dragon from Alien 3. Think of them as your generic runner zombies from Left 4 Dead and World War Z. Which means that there are special aliens as well. There are these annoying gits that will spit acid at you, which I think is particularly rude if you ask me. There are those that explode and just spray acid everywhere. Then there are pouncers that are similar to the hunters in Left 4 Dead. However, these gits like to hide around corners and ambush you. There's a drone similar in design to the big chap from Alien, and then an even more difficult warrior type scene in Aliens. These two are particularly nasty and very tanky. They will always feel like a threat, and there's nothing worse than peppering them with a smart gun and watching them continue to just barrel right towards you. But my word, it is good fun. And I love how intense the combat can get. There are plenty of moments where you feel like you're this close to being overrun, and then you and your team somehow pull victory back from the jaws of defeat. To mix things up, you won't just be fighting xenomorphs, but you'll also encounter advanced Weyland-Yutani combat synths, which encourages you to utilise the very, very basic cover mechanic. I have mixed feelings regarding these fights. On one hand, I really appreciate the attempt at variety, and it does mix things up, but on the other hand, I found these fights to be not very fun. Combat synths take a ton of firepower to go down, and they just feel like enormous bullet sponges, which means that these encounters would just kinda drag on a bit for me. They're easily my least favourite parts of the game, and if I'm honest, I found them particularly groan-inducing at times. But everything else, it's damn good fun, and it all mostly moves at such a fast and frantic pace that you can't help but getting caught up in it all. There are even moments where you fight working Joes from Alien Isolation, which I thought was a nice little touch. Bar the combat synths, there's never really a dull moment, and even if the objectives are simplistic, I always felt like I was doing something. Fireteam is absolutely full to the brim with fan service. We've got installations that look like classic environments from the series, we have remnants of Seegson in Working Joes that you do get to fight, and there's even other elements from Prometheus and Covenant. There is a lot for fans of the series to appreciate. Does it all work? Yeah, I think so. The game knows what it is, and it all adds to the experience, and it's not like it gets in the way of the gameplay. It's a cooperative shooter first, and it does that very, very well. The sound design is absolutely spot on as well. All the weapons are impactful, and the xenomorphs are appropriately nasty. I particularly like the little orchestral sting whenever you score a headshot against a xenomorph. The music is a little forgettable, if a bit strange in places, but that's hardly a knock on the game itself, since you'll mostly be too preoccupied trying to stay alive against hordes and listening to the score, or you'll just be hearing gunfire. This is another great entry into the franchise, and a must-play for fans. It usually goes on sale a fair amount, and even when it's not, the game's full price is more than worth it. With bots, you'll have a good time, but with friends, it is elevated considerably. I had a blast recording footage for this video, and I'll probably play a bunch more of this once the video's been finished as well. Besides, I never actually got to play the Pathogen DLC, so I might just have to rectify that. And while this section of the video might be shorter than others, that doesn't mean that this doesn't have a ton of replay value and isn't very, very, very good. This is a damn good time.
Xeno's following you.
Next up is yet another genre leap for the franchise. Aliens Dark Descent was developed by Tindalos Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment in 2023. This is a squad-based real-time strategy game, with the only other RTS being an AVP game back on the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox, which means that when this was announced it really stood out. On paper, or at a glance, I saw some similarities between Dark Descent and the XCOM series. However, unlike that latter franchise, the combat here is not turn-based, but you can sort of circumvent this by either slowing down time or even outright stopping it completely. The option is yours. This then allows you to issue commands to Marines, use abilities, and quickly survey the area. This function is absolutely essential, especially when playing on a console if you're an idiot like I am. Let's face it, using the controller for an RTS is not ideal, but I think the game does a really good job in terms of button layout. But what is the premise? It's actually a pretty good one, for the most part. Dark Descent takes place in 2198. A ship called the Bentonville drops off some cargo to the Pioneer Station. Unbeknownst to those on board the station, the cargo contains not only xenomorph specimens, but also eggs. When someone appears to purposely let one out of its container, the station goes to hell, which forces Administrator Hayes to initiate the Cerberus Protocol. This destroys not only the Bentonville, but damages the USS Otago and outright destroys a civilian freighter, the Baldwin. Hayes then finds herself face to face with a fully grown xenomorph, but is then rescued by a squad of Colonial Marines led by Sergeant Harper, who, for some reason, seems to have some kind of psychic power, and he can tell enemies are approaching. It's a bit weird. You just roll with it. They escape Pioneer Station and follow the Otago as it performs an emergency landing on the nearby planet. Hayes and the Marines must attempt to repair the ship whilst also aiding the civilians of the planet, where it would appear that some of the scientists there have been very busy. You know what? It's a pretty good setup, and there's a fair amount of twists and turns and reveals. It's all quite good. It's nothing, groundbreaking or anything, but I definitely think it does the job, and it gives you plenty of incentives to push on. Visually, the game is pretty spot on as well. It all looks like it belongs in-universe for the most part. Nowhere really looks like it would be particularly fun to live. The character models are a bit of a mixed bag for me. I think they were going for an almost comic book-like feel to the design. Everyone is very angular. The main characters look okay, to be fair, and also you'll only ever really see them up close during cutscenes, so I can forgive some of the lesser ones. The xenomorphs, though, all look really good. Missions play from a top-down perspective, as you'd expect, with basic orders to issue to the squad, as well as various abilities. As Marines level up, you can assign them a class, and these all come with unique abilities and special weaponry. And it's really imperative that you have a good, balanced squad for navigating stages efficiently. These skills all use command points, which will recharge over time by killing enemies and whatnot. Some class passives will also see this charge even faster. There's a lot to play around with here and customise, and speaking of customization, you can fully customise individual Marines. You can change their names, their appearance, what combat fatigues they're wearing, all that stuff. It's nothing fancy, but it is appreciated. It again really reminded me of XCOM, and just like XCOM, you can't really drag your heels and let the in-game days pass you by. The longer into the game you get, and the more time taken increases the danger level. Essentially, it's a ticking clock. But what's the gameplay actually like? Well, issuing commands to your squad is simple and easy. It's what you'd expect from the genre. You point where you'd like them to go, and then you click, and they go. You cannot issue separate movement commands to individual Marines, but honestly, that's not an issue because you'd never really want to split these guys up anyway. It's nothing fancy, but it works. And more importantly, this means it's just as easy to control using a gamepad, like I did, because again, I'm not very smart. As mentioned previously, there are abilities and skills that Marines have, from utilising shotguns for close encounters, flamethrowers, pulse rifle grenade launchers, laying down suppressing fire, which slows down the enemy and is really good, and flares that add bonus damages to enemies caught within them. You can also use various bits of kits from mines to automated sentry turrets, and trust me, you are going to be relying on these sentry turrets a lot. Just like movement, combat is equally as simple. However, just one xenomorph can dish out some serious damage to your squad if you're unprepared, and sometimes stealth is your absolute best friend for a couple of reasons. Firstly, your Marines will gain stress as missions progress and they initiate combat, and other experiences that, well, stress them out, to put it bluntly. If this isn't monitored or kept in check, you'll end up getting negative side effects as their stress level increases. This can be lowered by taking medication or another method that we'll get to later. Secondly, whenever you engage with our gloopy friends or are spotted by them, this ticker at the top right of the screen will continue to move along. And when it reaches certain points, if this happens, then the Hive will initiate an onslaught. And when that happens, well, you either hunker down with all of your sentry guns and abilities ready to go, or you attempt to run and lock yourself away, praying that they do not find you. Oh, and speaking of locking yourself away, every Marine can not only weld doors shut, but also open them as well. This is also how you'll save mid-mission as well. Just make sure a room has this green building icon and then secure it by welding all of the entrances. Doing this will not only allow you to save the game, but will greatly reduce the stress your team is overcome with. Don't get too carried away though, as welding doors costs engineering tokens, and there's only so many of these that you can hold. You occasionally come across hallways that are barricaded like this. These can be cleared using explosives, but the thing is, I never really did this unless the game forced me to do so. Why? Well, because it will alert xenomorphs and any other enemies in the location, and that always just feels like a really bloody awful idea. In a really nice touch, your APC, or the ARC as it is here, can be moved around the maps that are set outside. While it can only move to set locations on the map, you can still use this to your advantage, as it can assist you in gunning down any roaming enemies. And while you would expect this to set off a hunt or anything like that, it actually doesn't. Meaning it's basically a free kill machine when necessary. Which honestly can really help you when you want to gain some xenomorph samples, which are essential for the science team to research and create new equipment and items for your squad. The APC, I'm just going to call it an APC, the APC is also used for extracting your squad mid-mission and storing civilians and other personnel that you wish to save. And when you can't use this, you really miss it. As your Marines level up, they will be able to pick a specialisation, which are the classes that I mentioned earlier. You know, from gunners, medics, all that stuff. They're all okay actually and all very useful, but the best personally for me was the sniper. This class is such a blessing when you are trying to get rid of enemies quickly and with one shot. If you're trying to sneak through a level, you have to bring one of these guys. It's imperative. Late game, if you do not have a sniper with a suppressor, then you are going to have a very bad time. Once again on this list, xenomorphs are not the only thing that you'll have to contend with, as you will encounter plenty of human during the game because, and you'll never believe this, I know it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Some of them are fucking insane and see the xenomorphs as gods or some sort of ascension because, you know, when has that ever happened in the franchise? Oh god. Adding a human group certainly does mix up the gameplay, but I find it really weird just how many of them can just tank rounds from the Marines' arsenal. Some of them, I've even seen some of them survive a direct grenade blast. I don't know, I suppose they have like crazy person armour or something. And I always get a kick out of someone in rags, charging my heavily armoured Marines with nothing but a pickaxe. Like, you do you, I guess.
Damn fool!
However, there are some of these lunatics with firearms, which do force you to use the very simplistic cover mechanic. Later on in the game, there is a third, I don't want to call them faction because they all kind of work together, really, but, right, so, okay, big spoilers. Go to this time code if you really want to avoid this, if you're thinking of picking the game up. Right, are they gone? Are they gone? Okay, right, let's talk about the hybrids. Throughout the game, you'll find data pads talking about weird experimentation that the colonists have been carrying out, and finally, you discover the fruit of their labour. These bizarre things that I think are using the chestburster as an energy source or something. Okay, basically they've essentially found a way to keep the chestbursters inert within the body, but also making them visible externally because, I don't know, maybe someone felt like they had to have an obvious weak point or something? Thanks for the help, I suppose. It's, you know, certainly creative, and I'm all for new ideas in the franchise, but it does look a bit weird visually. But I'm not sure I really like their design. I saw screenshots of these months and months before I actually played this game, and if I'm honest, I thought it was from an entirely different game. I'm not sure that they really fit in aesthetically with everything else. Honestly, they remind me of the Chimera from Resistance. Does anyone else remember that? You know, the Resistance games on the PlayStation 3? No? No one remember? God, I'm fucking old. Still, it is variety, and for a game this long, it is definitely welcomed. They're also a complete pain in the arse to fight. And why is that? Well, it's due to the fact that they can just wander around areas teeming with xenomorphs, meaning that if you get into a firefight with them, you'll also alert nearby Gribblies that will then descend upon you and, more often than not, initiate a hunt. It can honestly become very, very frustrating. Dark Descent will take anywhere from 25 to 30 plus hours to complete on the first playthrough, especially if you are a bit of a completionist, like me, and you want to complete every single side objective on each mission. But in a nice touch, you don't actually have to do everything all at once, as you can actually return to previous mission areas and mop up side missions at your own convenience. Unfortunately though, Dark Descent is still really buggy in places. There have been times where my Marines just somehow, and I have absolutely no idea how this happens, but somehow they'll just run off of a ledge and just descend into the abyss below. They don't die, I just can't get them to move or do anything with them. It is profusely fucking annoying, as this means that you need to reload your most recent save again and again and again. And considering you can't just save whenever you'd like to, this can mean that you might suddenly lose a ton of progress because a Marine decided to take up flying lessons. I hate this shit. The sound of music is, yeah, it's okay, but I won't lie, it started to get a little bit tiresome hearing the same voice lines from Marines constantly. Most notably, this one.
You shall not pass, fuckers.
Okay, it was funny the first time, but once I heard it the millionth time within an hour, it got a little tiny bit grating. It's a little rough around the edges, and it's certainly far from perfect, but I actually really enjoyed my time with Dark Descent, and that's coming from someone that's terrible at RTS games. It has a few interesting ideas that attempt to freshen up the franchise, and while those ideas don't always stick the landing, I do appreciate them regardless. Plus there is a lot of content here, and while it may get a bit long in the tooth, it is certainly worth the money, and if you can pick it up on sale, that's an absolute steal. If you are a fan of the franchise as well as RTS games, then why haven't you actually played this yet? You owe it to yourself to change that as soon as possible. While I played it on console and it's functional with a controller, the superior way to play these games will always be on the PC with a mouse. You should really check this one out.
Focus fire on target! Come on, team!
And finally, we have Alien Rogue Incursion Part 1, developed and published by Survios, at least I think I'm pronouncing it right. This was initially released in 2024 on the MetaQuest 3, PSVR 2 and Steam VR, with a non-VR version finally releasing on PlayStation 5 and PC in 2025. As of recording, this is the most recent game set within the Alien universe. I was all kinds of excited when I saw the announcement. However, I do not currently own a PlayStation VR 2, and while I have a Quest 2 headset, it does not support this. Sad noises. As I said, a non-VR version though was released in late 2025, which meant I could finally actually play this. Otherwise, this part of the video would have consisted of me watching a playthrough and likely saying, looks fun, wish I could play it. Since this was a VR game first, I was a little concerned about the overall gameplay. You know, would it be too easy with a controller or too clunky? Well, Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised with how smooth this all felt. The player assumes the role of Zula Hendrix, who is actually an existing character within the expanded universe, having been first introduced by Dark Horse Comics in the 2016 miniseries Aliens Defiance. The character has certainly been through a lot, even meeting and becoming close friends with Amanda Ripley, which is kind of cool. But that doesn't matter. What's this story about? The game opens with Hendrix and her synthetic partner Davis heading to a settlement called Castor's Cradle, which is on a planet named Perdan. Her friend from her Marine days, Benjamin Carver, has contacted her seemingly requiring assistance, but as they approach the planet, their ship is attacked by the settlement's anti-air weaponry, forcing them to crash land at Castor's Cradle, where it would appear that not only are there xenomorphs, shock, surprise, horror, but that someone, or rather something else, is causing all manner of problems throughout the station. I really liked this setup, and I really like this story. It's not just the nefarious Weyland-Yutani once again, well, yet anyway, but in fact another company called Gemini Exoplanet Solutions, or GES for short, who've gone and made a big ol' mistake. Just like with Seegson in Isolation, this just further helps the world of Alien feel more expansive, but you might actually recognise the name GES, as they were also involved with Sevastopol. That's interesting. That is all well and good though, but how is the game itself? Well, I'm glad to say, Rogue Incursion is genuinely really intense at times. And there were plenty of moments where I would dispatch a xenomorph with the very last round in the chamber, just in the nick of time. Real edgy seat stuff. While it is more action-orientated than Alien Isolation, there's still a good sense of survival horror at play here, though I don't think it's as well crafted as Creative Assembly's effort, but that's not really a mark against Rogue Incursion. The player is constantly rummaging for ammunition and healing supplies. There are colour-coded keys to find, as well as both audio and data logs to find as well, with some of the latter needed to open optional rooms to gather even more supplies. It has all of the staples you'd expect from the genre. Although with ammunition I always felt like I was fully stocked up, until things really kicked off, and then that massive stockpile would just evaporate. I'm fine with this since the initial hours can give you a false sense of security. I particularly really liked the xenomorph animations. Everything looks so fluid and natural with them jumping from various locations, scuttling across the walls and ceiling, or sneaking around. That is, unfortunately, until I started to notice a few weird glitches later on in the game, where they would clip through walls or just get stuck in strange places. It's such a shame when this happens because it really removes that atmosphere and tension that otherwise the game does a really good job at making. Thankfully, for the most part, everything works as it should. Rogue Incursion doesn't always bombard you with enemies like Colonial Marines, which works to its benefit, because when you do encounter multiple xenomorphs at once, it makes the situation even more nerve-wracking than it would be otherwise, especially since they can take a fair amount of firepower to go down. For the first section of the game, I'd encounter one at a time, with the occasional double act making me panic ever so slightly. But later on, there are sections where you need to defend your position, and I found myself on the edge of my seat. It was like every muscle in my body had tensed. And you know what I found the most deeply refreshing? Since Hendrix is already an established character from the comics, she has not only already encountered xenomorphs, or X-rays as both her and Davis one call them, but also Weyland-Yutani themselves, meaning that these characters are in the same boat as us. It's such a little thing that I really appreciate it. They know all these things are dangerous and that Weyland-Yutani are fucking greasy scumbags. It also looks pretty nice visually as well, with the xenomorphs in particular looking great. These take after the warriors as seen in Aliens as opposed to the drone or big chap from Alien, and all of the locations you explore look absolutely spot on for the universe it's set in. When it works, it really works. The arsenal is pretty bog standard actually, with a revolver, a shotgun, and an early variation of the pulse rifle at the player's disposal, as well as a map, a wrench to solve basic electrical puzzles, and a motion tracker that, well, let's be honest, most players will have this equipped about 90% of the time. I know I bloody did. Unfortunately, you won't get your hands on anything like a flamethrower or the smart gun. But that is not to say we won't in a sequel. More on that later. Gunplay is serviceable, it's decent, with everything controlling smoothly and effectively. It's nothing fancy, but it's serviceable. It does the job. The soundtrack it's alright, it's okay, and it even has its own section on the main menu, which was pretty surprising, actually. I can't think of any recent games that had something like this. Don't get me wrong, I'm used to sound tests and the sort from the Mega Drive days, but certainly wasn't expecting it here in this day and age. As I said, it's alright, it's okay. It definitely adds to the atmosphere at times. Honestly, it felt pretty similar to the soundtrack for Alien Romulus. Sound design, though, is absolutely spot on. Lots of sounds echoing throughout the facilities that will keep you on your toes, coupled together with the sounds of your motion tracker, and it all works so wonderfully to keep you on your toes, especially when you can hear the snarls and hisses of nearby xenomorphs. Unfortunately, the final 2 or so hours for the game do really begin to drag, with constant fetch quests being dropped on you at the worst possible time. All of these involve lazily reusing locations that you've already been to, with the medical area the most egregious, as just when you think you're at the finish line of the game, it drops another fetch quest. So, let me sum it up for you. So, the medical facility, it basically goes like this. Okay, right, so, yeah, go and prep this thing for surgery. Oh, no! The power isn't functioning properly in this room. Oh, bugger. What you'll need to do is, yeah, if you just go and reroute it at the junction box at the other end of the medical area. Yeah, if you go and do that, it'll be fine. Okay, cool. So it's done. Now you just need to prep the med pod and... Oh, God. Oh no, there's a dead body in there already. Well, I mean, yeah, you could go in there and probably just drag it out, you know. What you're going to need to do is use powerful UV rays to disintegrate it. But, oh God, no. Guess what? Need a power source for it. But it's okay, it's over there, at the other end of the fucking area. Listen, like, I get it, okay? Most video games will always find ways to extend the playtime, but really good and clever game design will hide it so well that you don't even notice it until you're actively looking for it. And if I can just quickly bitch about another irritation I found in the game. Towards the end of the game, you'll find yourself encountering facehuggers, which are, as expected, a royal pain in the arse to hit. The developers also put them in some really strange and cheap spots as well. Like, why was there one just sat in a locker?
Ah yes, I will lock myself in the container on the off chance that somebody opens it.
That's some real 4D chess from our scuttling friend here. But this also helps to raise some interesting questions in terms of the plot that I really hope are answered in part 2. Okay, right, so I'm gonna talk briefly about spoilers. So once again, go to this time code if you wish to avoid any spoiler talk. Okay? Bugger off, go on, get out of there. Anyway, right, so Hendrix has been impregnated with a chestburster. However, xenomorphs and facehuggers are still actively attacking her, which is something that even Davis 1 comments on.
Very odd that those facehuggers approached you despite your condition. I wonder why.
I don't know, Davis. I just want to move on.
Copy. Let's head out to the garage.
Helen, a synthetic from Cass's Cradle, assists in removing the chestburster from Hendrix, but when they do so, it doesn't scream or thrash around or anything when it's removed, because it's already dead. There is also the mystery regarding who or what has taken over the station. My personal money is on Rogue AI. I mean, it certainly feels pretty obvious with plenty of audio logs seeming to outright state this, you know, right? Wait, hang on a second. That's why it's called Rogue Incursion, isn't it? Would you look at that? Look, my brain does work. Sometimes, you know, I guess I just used my one use of Smart Brain for the month. It's got to recharge. At the very end of the game, there is a decent boss battle against a Praetorian, which is the first time we've seen one of those in fucking ages, I think. It's nothing fancy, but it is a fun way to end the game before the inevitable cliffhanger. And that's Rogue Incursion. I really enjoyed most of my time with it, but those final 2 hours really started to grate on me. It is by no means perfect, and it doesn't do anything to reinvent the wheel, but those first 2 acts in particular are pretty enjoyable for the most part. Exploration is fun, the atmosphere is tense, it looks pretty good, and the gunplay is serviceable, and I'm personally really looking forward to playing through the next installment and seeing what fate awaits Zula Hendricks. And if it plays into Alien Isolation 2 in any way. If you haven't played it and you wish to do so, you should absolutely check this out. Just, temper your expectations for the latter portion of the experience, and I think you'll have a good time. And if you can play the VR version, well, I'm deeply, deeply jealous of you. Oh, bloody hell. Well, that's it. That's it for now. Eventually, this list will be outdated because Creative Assembly have finally announced a sequel to Alien Isolation, which guys, I'm so excited for it. It's so ridiculously excited. Plus, there is also the release of Rogue Incursion Part 2 to look forward to. This video was... this is quite the undertaking. It took a long time. I really do hope you enjoyed it. I wasn't able to go as in-depth with these games as much as I would have liked to, because there's just like so many of them, and I was already conscious of the runtime for this as it was. So I had to cut down certain sections considerably. But, I hope you enjoyed it. I got to talk a lot about Alien Isolation, and by that I mean I waffled about how fantastic I think it is. But no, I really hope you enjoyed this. I think for the Alien series as a whole, I think we've really been spoilt for quality and variety in recent years in particular. I just hope that the franchise can carry on with this momentum, and that developers can give us more really great experiences set in this universe. Just don't let Gearbox anywhere near it, please. Like, the Xenomorphs are already greasy enough, and we don't need any more from Randy. We just don't need that. But wait a second. This video series isn't actually done yet. No. No. Get yourselves ready, because next time, in like 1,000 years, or whatever long it takes me to make, it is time for All Out War. I'm going to return to this franchise and take a look at every single Alien vs Predator game released thus far. And just like this video, there are some cracking titles to look forward to. I cannot wait. But until then, take care everyone, and I'll catch you later.